Okay, we're up and going.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Good evening, everybody. This is the convening of the district calendar committee. We met a couple of weeks ago to look at a possible calendar to be implemented because of the COVID-19 crisis. Just as a reminder, the way that things work with COVID and in the school system, the school board has the authority to bring forth and to put into place an emergency calendar in order to respond to the needs of the district, the students, the teachers, et cetera, the community, based on how school should start and can start. Again, as a reminder, we already have an official calendar, which was approved by the school board that you, the committee, submitted last fall. That has been submitted to the state by Mr. Ford. The last time we met, we looked at a possible calendar that would start us, excuse me, in August, and Mr. Ford had done some work and we had done some work with the BCA that would allow us to have some time at the beginning of the school year, at the beginning of the calendar, I think 5 days total with teachers in order to make sure that they were prepared for whatever model, instructional model we needed to put into place. Since that time, we have met with some other groups and including the principals, and the principals have brought forth another option. If you remember, two of the issues that we wanted to make sure that we did not create barriers regarding salary, the salary schedule. We did not want to interrupt the salary schedule for anyone. And we also had a possible barrier with classified staff in that the number of days that they work and how their calendar works. We didn't want to interfere with either one of those two things. The calendar that Mr. Ford's going to describe for you this evening, those two things are not disturbed. We have found a way to possibly make this calendar work without interfering with either one of those things. The request from the principals was that we take those PD days and we spread them out a little bit at the beginning of the year so the teachers don't feel so overwhelmed coming in and having 5 days of new learning all at once. So with that said, I am going to share my screen and show you this new proposed calendar, and I'll turn the mic over to Mr. Ford and allow him to maybe explain the process of putting this into place. So Mr. Ford, you're on.
Thank you, Dr. Delweiler. I'll give you a second for that calendar
Okay.
to be made available and through the sharing of your screen. So I'll hold for just a second. I want to welcome everyone to this presentation. I'm going to walk through the calendar. I believe there's only one calendar that we're going to discuss this evening. I'll be more than happy to explain the ideas behind the calendar and be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. While Dr. Delweiler is pulling up that screen, I do want to share that the calendar that you're about to see has had several agencies, there we go, that have provided input to this calendar. And I believe not only does it meet the variables that Dr. Delweiler mentioned and alluded to in his conversation, it also meets all of the requests of the various agencies, stakeholders within the school district that we have spoken with. So what you have in front of you is a calendar that first of all meets all state requirements for state statute in regards to the calendar. It also fulfills all contractual and policy requirements as outlined through Boone County Board of Education board policy and the negotiated contract between the school district and BCEA and BCCEA. What you see with this calendar, first of all, is a calendar that adopts 172 student instructional days. You see that box in red on May the 27th. Technically, the state requires, just as a brief summary to some other conversations that you've heard, some other presentations that you've heard from me, we are required to have 170 instructional days as a minimum, and we are required as a school district to have a minimum of 1,062 instructional hours. And by going to school 172 days, ending the school year on May 27th, and of course that can be altered with snow days, but as you see right now, we fulfill both of those requirements. Teachers are required to have a minimum by state law of 185 school days. That includes instructional days for students, an opening day, a closing day, 4 holidays, and then professional development days. May the 28th, which is identified as the closing day with this calendar, again, barring weather, fulfills a contract of 187 days for our teachers, which is required by our teaching contract with BCEA. So we exceed the state requirement of 185 days, and we fulfill the contractual agreement between the district and BCEA of 187 days. So this calendar, I'm proud to say, fulfills all state and local requirements to meet KDE standards and get approval by KDE. You will see within this calendar that there's a 3-day holiday break for Thanksgiving. That's negotiated between the district and requested by BCEA. I saw both Bobby and Mary on this meeting. And so in conversations with them, we've been able to continue on with the 3-day weekend for Thanksgiving, or actually 5-day weekend, the 3-day holiday for Thanksgiving, which is something that we started several years ago and has not been a hindrance to the school district as far as student attendance. Another thing you see is that we have maintained a 10-day Christmas vacation starting on December 21st and running through January the 1st. We've had several conversations with our high school principals, both that I've been a part of and been made aware of by both Dr. Detweiler and Mrs. Rootman. And it is my understanding that the high school principals are okay with the 77-day first semester ending on December 18th. You see spring break, April the 12th to the 16th. You see the 4-day weekend in October with a professional day and our flex day that teachers can work off. You see a 3-day weekend in February, a 3-day weekend in March. Fully supported by all parties. I would hate to think that we would have Dr. Martin Luther King Day on January 18th, and like this past school year, we didn't have but one snow day, and it makes for a very long February and March to get to spring break. So that's why those 3-day weekends are inserted. And that has been a historical negotiation between the district and BCEA. The point that I want to bring special attention to are the first basically 8 to 10 days of the school year. And that's why I've saved that for last, in August. We have to have an opening day as outlined by state statute. We're looking at an opening day for teaching staff on August the 13th, a PD day on August the 14th. The original calendar that was approved by the board on December the 12th that Dr. Detweiler alluded to had those 2 days on August the 10th and on August the 11th. That first PD day that was originally scheduled for August 11th, shifting it to August the 14th, is a day that many schools have asked for a trade, or to put that day on a different day in August, because they've already brought in or contracted speakers for that day with their staff in their building. So that's what that PD day is maintained for. You see the other PD days I want to mention on August the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 24th. In our last meeting, it was brought to the attention of this committee by principals that they were looking for PD time at the beginning of the school year to give the schools adequate time to prepare for bringing the kids in on some type of schedule that I believe will be communicated out by Mr. Turner, hopefully in the very near future. And that's what we would use those PD days for. But they asked, as Dr. Detweiler mentioned, that they be broken up. So we bring the teachers in on August 13th. They have a PD day on August the 14th, unless they have already transferred that day to another day in August contractually. Then they have PD days on August 18, 19, 20. August 17th, you'll see that as an X day. That is a green day. And those X days that are in green, August 17th, August 21st, and May the 18th, which was a primary election day that could happen that I mentioned in our last meeting. If you look at the key at the bottom of the page, you see where those are work day for 12-month employees only. 12-month employee certified, 12-month employed classified employees. So I'll use myself as an example. I'm a 12-month employee. And so I would be required to work on those 3 days. There are people in my office who are 12-month employee classified. They would be required to work on the 17th of August, the 21st of August, and the 18th of May. And what we're trying to do there is fulfill their certified and classified for 12-month employees, fulfill their work year as far as the number of days they are required to work contractually. You see that August 21st with this calendar maintains the first pay day in the new year 2021 pay cycle. The last pay day in the pay cycle for 1920 is technically August the 7th. You see that August 21st is 2 weeks after August 7th, obviously. And so therefore, there's no interruption to the pay cycle. We're on a 2-week pay cycle, and this calendar maintains ongoing that pay cycle. And then the last thing is we have employees who work 180-day calendars. Their first day would be August the 18th. That would maintain that they too would be able to fulfill within this calendar their 180-day contractual assignment, and they would get paid in that first pay cycle on August the 21st. So there would not be a delay or an interruption in the pay cycle, and it would not cause finance to have to go to alternating week pay cycles. This calendar fulfills the requirements for our finance department, specifically our certified and classified payroll generalists, to prepare payroll and have everyone on the same pay cycle for August the 21st. So that's what those days are identified as, with those colors. And if you look, as I said, if you refer to the bottom of the page of the calendar, that is laid out for you in that explanation with those 3 lines with this calendar. Again, this calendar not only fulfills all state requirements, contractual requirements, KDE requirements, and policy requirements for Boone County Schools, this calendar fulfills all the requests that have been identified to administration through conversations with several agencies, 3 levels of principals, BCEA, BCCEA, and it's my understanding ongoing communications through Mr. Turner with our school board members. And I know that Mr. Fryman and Dr. Brown are on this meeting as the representatives from the board with this calendar committee, and they can attest that there have been conversations ongoing about calendar in preparation for a final calendar that the board may approve as an emergency calendar for the school district. So all agencies have been communicated with in regards to this calendar. And Dr. Detweiler, I'm very proud of the fact that this calendar is a summation of months of conversations, negotiations, discussions, models being created and presented to several different agencies. And I believe I'm going to say this simply because of my background, 15 years as the DPP for the district, 15 years as a member of the negotiation team between the district and BCA in regards to the calendar. Long discussions, long hours of discussions with my good friend Bobby Grimm. I believe that this calendar fulfills everyone's request, requirement, need moving forward. And I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful that this contract can move, or this calendar, can move forward and give us the opportunity to present to all stakeholders in the community, answer questions, and move forward. So at this time, Dr. Detweiler, that's the presentation for this calendar. I hope that I've done it justice, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that anyone may have from the committee in regards to this calendar. And it's my understanding, Dr. Detweiler, this is the only calendar that we're going to be presenting tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ford. You always do a great job with that. You put a lot of work into that. Appreciate that. Just a couple clarifying points before we take questions. We have spoken with almost all of the constituents. We met with the elementary principals this morning, and then the middle school and high school principals we meet with on Wednesday. But it is true, I believe, and I think Mr. Wilson, you can help me with this. I think Mr. Turner did in fact talk to the high school principals about that semester issue. As we go forward talking with the principals, there are little things that come up, and we did have something come up this afternoon with the elementary principals that I'll mention in just a moment. Why don't we open it up for questions for Mr. Ford before we move on to that piece?
Hey, Jim, this is
Yes.
Kim Webb. So
Hi,
just to be clear that the classified and the 12-month employees are going to be working over Christmas break and spring break. Am I reading the calendar that way?
No.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We have over Christmas break, where you see the X days and the holiday for Christmas and New Year's. Basically, except for a small group of people, the district is shut down, like it always has been, Kim.
Okay.
There's a group of custodial staff that do work. There are techs, computer techs that do work during that time period. And it's because of the number of days that they are obligated to fulfill within their contract. But that does not change for those small groups. For example, another is the superintendent. The superintendent does work during the Christmas break to fulfill the number of days, both contractually and legally with statute, that he has to fulfill for his contract. So it's a very small group. That has never changed. The Christmas break is the 10-day Christmas break that we have had historically. I hope that clarifies for you, Kim.
Okay. No, it really does. I just looked at the X's. I didn't see, and the key at the bottom says workday for 12-month employees only, certified and classified. So that's where I saw the X's and was like, oh, they've agreed to work those days. So
No, Kim,
my part.
Kim, if you look at August 17th, August 21st, and May 18th, you see the white boxes with the green X's in them. Those are the days I was referring to for 12-month employees, both certified and classified. The white boxes with the green X's, not the green boxes with the black X's.
Perfect. It's been a long day, so I appreciate the clarification coming off vacation. So thank you.
Not a problem, Kim. That's what we're here for this meeting, is my understanding. Happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, it always takes some time to like orient to this calendar when I look at it too. There's so much detail in it, which we need to have, but that's a good question, Kim. So thanks. Other questions or comments?
Jim, it appears to me that we've only put in one extra day in between all the days that we had before. If we thought about doing like a two work days for teachers, take one off, 2 work days for teachers, and the weekends would fall in there too. I don't know if are they spread out enough to meet the purpose of this, because I like I said, I only see one extra day in there. I know we've moved the calendar back. We're no longer starting on the 10th, but you just move the days further into August instead of separating those days.
Right. I'm going to defer to Kim Best. I mean, it was her. She represents the elementary group, but their group was the group that really expressed this concern. Kim, what do you think about that?
You're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Kim.
There we go. Sorry
There
about
you
that.
go.
Too many Zooms today. Too many.
Right.
So yeah, so what our big concerns were having those consistent PD days all at one time was, you know, essentially you had 6 in a row broken up. So having opening day on the 13th, then a PD day, then you have the weekend plus Monday. So you have that 3-day weekend, then 3 PD days together, then another weekend. And then that PD day on the 4th, which was part of our conversation, or on the 24th, part of our conversation today in the elementary principals meeting. It does break it up enough that we feel like teachers would not be overwhelmed without creating too much of an issue all at one time. Jim, did you want me to talk about what we talked about in the elementary principals meeting?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me preface this by saying that there's been a lot of give and take to arrive at this calendar too. And this might be another one of those give and take. They had a suggestion for getting the school year to start on a Monday. And let me describe why, and then I'll turn it over to Kim. If in fact, our goal is to bring kids back, our goal is to bring all the kids back. We would love to have all the kids back. But with the various restrictions from the CDC and the requirements from the state, et cetera, that might not be possible. So if we have to put some sort of hybrid schedule into place, which we're working on trying to determine if that is the case, like an A-B kind of schedule, starting on a Tuesday rather than a Monday could be difficult to get into the pattern. So elementary principals came up with a suggestion. So Kim, I'll turn it over to you for that.
And before I even start to say anything, I just want to say thank you to everybody for all the work on this calendar. It has been a lot of work, and I'm feeling really good about everything that you guys have done so far and that we've done so far. So as Jim said, you know, our concern is if we end up having to go to some type of a hybrid schedule, whether it ended up being an AABB schedule or an AB schedule, that having kids start on a Tuesday as opposed to a Monday could already offset one of those groups with being shortened, especially if it were an AABB schedule. The A group will already be shorted 1 day of instruction. So that was our thought. If we could just shift that PD day on the 24th, if we could move the opening day to the 12th and then put 2 PD days. So opening day would be on the 12th, make the 13th and 14th PD days. So we would have 2 PD days there. Then the weekend and Monday, 3 days of PD, then the weekend again, and then students would start right there on the 24th. So just in case we would end up with a hybrid schedule, that would start everybody off on the same schedule. And we wouldn't have to change anything in that schedule to even that out. The worst thing that we thought about doing is having parents have that week already altered so that we could just be continuous with everything starts on a Monday.
And Mike, what would that do to the classified? Would that impact them at all? Would we have to shift their start day?
No, sir. I'm looking at that right now. We move opening day to the 12th. We move that PD day to the 13th. I got to count. I'm counting as I speak. Okay. So Kim, if I heard you correctly, we would still have the 3-day weekend
Mhm.
the 15th, 16th, and 17th, but we would have opening day, PD day, then the 3-day weekend,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, correct.
And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then 3-day weekend, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, but the 24th will be the first day for children, correct?
Correct.
Jim, if I'm reading this correctly, everything would just move up one
So
day.
the end of the calendar then would be closing on the 27th, holiday on the 28th of May. Is that correct?
That the 172 would fall on May 26th. Closing day would be on May 27th. There would be nothing on the 28th. That would just be the end of the school year would be over.
Okay.
And that holiday that's marked for Memorial Day is for 12-month employees.
Got it.
Historically, those 12-month employees that get like 4th of July, but this calendar doesn't run into July. So Memorial Day is for 12-month employees, like 4th of July is for 12-month employees, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So everything would just move up a day all the way through the calendar. We would end up first semester with 78 days. And like I said, everything would just shift up one day. So the count for students would start on August the 24th, which would mean we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days of students in August. And so by shifting everything up a day, it would shift up a day when, for example, August 17th, where it says first day of school year for classified employees would be August the 18th. That would shift up to August the August 17th. So 12-month employees would work and 180-day employees would start. 12-month employees, both certified and classified, would work on August the 17th instead of having that 3-day weekend. Our 180-day employees would work August the 17th with 12-month employees, or we could move them up to August the 14th and give them a 3-day weekend. John may want to speak to that from the Classified Association, but basically everything would just move up a day.
Yeah. Charlie, John, what do you guys
I'm
think
sorry.
about that?
Charlie, John, I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right.
My first one, I was going to ask, I mean, I've gotten a lot of grumbling from a lot of my people over, the teachers not working the 5 days, because of course that starts well, we're here 5 days. Well, I'm not really going to argue that one. What's the 2 days, the 17th and the 21st? What are you going to do with the classified people? Is this going to be another one of these ones where they stay home and remote work? Because like I was talking to Eric today, we need to get these people back into the grind of getting back to work, because they're just getting too comfortable staying home. I hate to say it. I've been working the whole time, so it doesn't matter to me. My group does. But I just want to avoid confusion where these people think they got to stay home those 2 days, because you have no teachers in now giving them any instruction during the day. They're going to be wandering around with nothing to do, like I said, which will lead them to think they can stay home again. So is there a plan to put something, for them to do while they're in?
I would agree with you 100%. We would have to have a plan that would be, that would meet the needs of, and that's just not filler too, of course.
Right.
Kathy, I don't know if there would be trainings on that day. It's one thing to provide training for 1 day or 2 days. Doing it 5 or 6 days would be crazy. That's when we run into trouble, when we're trying to just fill the days. But Kathy, do you think that there are particular trainings because of the SEL, socio-emotional, that on those days we could provide that would be meaningful?
I think we could, because what we're looking at is para-eds and staff support and people that are in the front offices. I think that's a good time to do customer service with some people, as well as trauma-informed care. And perhaps there are some things in the classrooms that they could do for teachers as they prepare to get started.
Kathy, one of the things that we had talked about as principals is, we would really welcome having some days when only our classified staff are here, because we do sometimes feel like our classified staff kind of get pushed to the wayside in PD, or we design PD for certified staff and we just kind of fit classified staff in wherever they can. So being able to offer them some very individualized training specific to what they need, they support our students just like everybody else does. To me, that does offer us some more flexibility, that they would have smaller groups and we would be able to give them the training that they need as well.
Your special ed and your preschool paras especially have some required training that they need. Charlie, wouldn't that take care of some of the transportation issues too, where we don't have enough time for their 8-hour updates and everything?
I'm sure it would help them too. I mean, Kathy, like I said, my biggest thing is I don't want people thinking they can stay home. They got to start getting back in. But the first thing I'm going to hear is, well, there's no teachers there, so there's nothing for me to do, so I should stay home. Yeah. I think, like I told Eric today, unfortunately, we created this big monster of people thinking I can work from home, and we've got to get them back into the grind of knowing, hey, you got to get back into buildings too. So.
And Kim, wouldn't you think that the principals would have all kinds of ideas of what they need in their particular buildings?
Absolutely. I think especially for those of us who have units in our building, those paras always need extra training. To talk about Ackerman specifically, we're a Leader in Me school, and sometimes my classified staff don't get to participate in a lot of those Leader in Me trainings because they happen during staff meetings that our classified staff don't stay for. So it's a perfect time to really to just honor them with some of the same training that the other staff get that they don't.
I agree with Kim as well. Knowing in advance that we have those days, I think principals will be able to plan accordingly to train and work with our classified staff. Also, on another note that Mike Ford was talking about in regards to Kim's suggestion of moving the PD day, I'm not so sure that the effort of moving all of that would be offset, because if you look at the calendar 2 weeks into the school year, we're off, we're on a holiday again on a Monday, and then a month later it's Friday and Monday. Another thought that we could look at, I think it would be probably more confusing than beneficial, is if we have a shortened week that we take out. Like if we were doing the AACBB model, we would take the C day out of a 4-day week and just do ABCD. However, that shifts everyone's days, and that also messes with parents and their schedules and planning for daycare, childcare, whatnot. So I understand that it could be more of a nightmare than beneficial. But I know, as Kim said earlier, a lot of work has gone into this calendar, and I'm okay if we move that PD day on the 24th, but I'm not sure the effort to do that and shifting everything would be offset if 2 weeks later we have a Monday off again.
Thank you, Mike. Those are excellent points. Thank you for thinking through that.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Mike Ford, how would this impact if at some point we need to be off because of COVID? Does that then start us into a variable calendar? What do we do?
The governor, actually through the office of the lieutenant governor, has recently issued a memorandum that has created executive orders to allow school districts to utilize any number of non-traditional instructional days if required. If you recall, last spring, there was Senate Bill 177 that was adopted and immediately signed by the governor that provided school districts the opportunity to go full NTI and allowed us to make adjustments to several reports that were required to provide to KDE in regards to where we get our funding for the next school year. Senate Bill 177 went away on June the 30th. So the governor, as I stated, through the lieutenant governor's office, has issued an order in the form of a memorandum that has been approved through it was originally negotiating communications was done with the commissioner, the interim commissioner at that time of education and the Department of Education, to allow school districts, if necessary, if we reach a point where the governor says we're in a state of emergency again and we get to shut it down, then we can go back to full NTI like we did starting on March the 16th of this prior school year and the way we went through the remainder of the school year. So this calendar would be beautiful if we could stay with this calendar throughout the entire school year. But if the situation dictates, as we continue to get reports of the number of cases testing positive across the Commonwealth, and the governor would have to issue an executive emergency order, the plans have already been put into place, very similar to Senate Bill 177, but this time through the governor's abilities to issue an executive order. And the memorandum's already been approved and adopted by both the governor's office and the Department of Education, where we can make necessary emergency adjustments immediately. So that's already in place. If necessary, the school district has already applied to the Department of Education to be an NTI, non-traditional instructional district, if necessary, if warranted. That approval has already been granted for our school district. So we have everything in place, ready to make adjustments if necessary, depending on the number of positive cases and the governor's orders during the upcoming school year. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Rootman?
Yes, I have another question. There is something called a variable calendar where we can add time to a day if we have to in order to get our 1,062 hours. If that comes into play, how does that happen? Does that happen by changing the calendar? What do we do then?
Let me back up and give a quick historical statement. Our school district already exceeds the minimum number of minutes for an instructional day as approved by our Board of Education. State law dictates that a school day must be a minimum of 6 hours. Our board has already adopted, this is something that I prepare and provide to the board every March, and they approve for the next school year. Our normal school day is already exceeding 6 hours. We have a 6 hour and 15-minute instructional day. So at day 170, which on this calendar you see in front of you is May 25th, which would move up to May 24th if we make that shift. Day 170 overtly exceeds the 1,062 minimum hours of instruction because we have 15 minutes extra a day. 15 minutes a day over 172 days fulfills the requirement and then some as outlined by Department of Education standards. So we would not have to make that adjustment to an alternative calendar. We already have the minutes built in. However, I will say this, the same memorandum that was adopted, proposed, and approved that came out of the Lieutenant Governor's office allows for an emergency adjustment immediately if necessary for a school district to fulfill their 1,062 hours. The same type of adjustment was provided for in Senate Bill 177 back in the spring, moving the school day up to 7 hours. Boone County School District did not have to make that adjustment. We were able to fulfill the hours requirement of 1,062 because we already have that extra 15 minutes in place every instructional day. And so because our board and the workings of the district office and my office with the board and superintendent were proactive in those measures over years. This is something we've done ever since I've been the DPP. We've had that 6 hour and 15-minute instructional day, which allows the board to make adjustments at the end of the school year if necessary. We've already fulfilled those requirements. We did not have to use the alternative calendar last year. I do not foresee us having to utilize an alternative calendar for the upcoming year because the district has been proactive to provide the required minutes up front. And that's already been approved by our board.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yes, ma'am. I hope that answers your question.
Mike, on that same vein, if I think about I'm thinking about all the possibilities, and I'm thinking about potential rolling closures of classrooms and or schools. Is there legislation that gives flexibility as they move in and out of traditional and NTI as a class or as a school based on individual needs and things that come up?
Dr. Brown, that's already been handled through this memorandum. I'm not at work. I'm at my home right now. I don't have the memorandum right in front of me, but I have a copy of the memorandum, and I've read the memorandum from the Lieutenant Governor several times. And I can assure you that that action, if necessary, going in and out, if necessary, because we have been approved as an NTI district, that memorandum already gives us the flexibility, if necessary, to move in and out of an NTI schedule, if necessary. That's already been done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, that's in conjunction with the proactive nature of what we've put in place historically in the spring for the next school year, and the memorandum that has been approved and adopted by the governor, lieutenant governor's office, and the Department of Education.
Okay. What other comments and questions do you have? The next step after this meeting, just to let you know, is tomorrow morning at 7:30 when I meet Mr. Turner. I will let him know how this meeting went and what was discussed. The calendar that you see in front of you is the one that he charged us to bring to you. And then throughout the day, as I said, there was little alterations that were made as suggestions. And so he'll hear about those tomorrow morning as well. So ultimately, Mr. Turner will.
Jim, you're muted.
I was singing my ABCs. That's what I was doing there. Sorry about that. No, I'll go back. Thank you for that, Mike. The next step moving forward is that tomorrow morning at 7:30, I will present to Mr. Turner what happened at the meeting. And the calendar that you see in front of you, the one that we've been discussing, is the one that we were charged with reviewing with you this evening. He will also hear about the elementary principal's suggestion about the alteration at the very beginning to start on a Monday. So ultimately, it is up to Mr. Turner and the school board to decide which one they go with, if they go with one. So again, we're still in that kind of that give and take area. We're pretty close, I think. I think that the board and Mr. Turner will make some decision very soon. With that known, are there other comments or questions that we can address this evening?
Dr. Detweiler, if I may ask one question in preparation for that meeting tomorrow
Yes, sir.
morning for Mr. Turner and the staff that's going to discuss the calendar. Would you need me to create a calendar tonight that shows that adjustment and title it Amendment 1B, for example, so that you have a visual depiction of what that calendar looks like for tomorrow morning? Just let me know.
That would be very wonderful if you would do that. I'd appreciate that. As long as everybody on this committee agrees that it's a viable option. I guess I have to ask that question first. Are we in agreement? Does anybody have objection to presenting both of those options?
If we move it off of that Monday, then you're not going to have them split up even more than what they are right now. if you're moving that day back one, you're still going to have only one extra day in there.
Right. That's true. So the
I
spread
would
out,
still do something where it's, we go 2 PD days, a day off, 2 PD days, a day off, 2 PD days, and start school.
so you would go, just to clarify, Bobby, so you would have opening day on the 12th, have a PD day 13, 14, the day off on the 17th, PD day for 18, 19, and then a day off? Is that what you're saying?
I haven't worked it out altogether in that sense. I would just, when I looked at the calendar, I saw that you were only technically adding one day in there. And I thought the goal was to separate those days so that it wasn't overkill. And adding one day in there, you're still having 3 solid days of PD
In the middle.
and no time to think about it. And so if I had 2 days of PD and a day and a weekend to think about what it was I was supposed to be doing or how I was going to make that work, have 2 more days of PD and then a day or a weekend, however that works in there, for me to see how I'm going to implement what you're telling me to implement. And I know that we've also discussed that some of those things could occur not while we're on that actual PD day. I just, if the whole point of doing this was to separate those days out, I don't see it happening in what we are doing. We just move the calendar back a week.
You're right, except for those 2 days that were added, but you're just saying that there's still a big clump in the middle where it's still maybe an intense time. Other thoughts, Mary or anybody? Other thoughts?
And yeah, also Jim, I know for Cooper, 2 of those days, like we waived those to August 5th and 6th. So for us, that spreads it out already. And I believe, a lot of schools waived days, for various reasons. So I think no matter the this calendar, I think it's going to spread out even more when we look at what we waived. And like, for instance, 5th and 6th for me, it's going to free up, 2 days that are there probably in that.
Yeah, that is a good point. And Mr. Ford mentioned that at the beginning, we are honoring those waive days. So that would break it up for those schools that waive, which is, I think, most of the schools did waive something.
I thought when we looked at it, there was a minimum number of schools because it wasn't going to be too many that we had to work with in order to honor those days. When we first talked about it.
There was a minimum of schools that took that May 18th day that moved it, but there were some others that did take some of the beginning PD days and had waived them in August. I wish I had that list in front of me. I do not have it. So we can also bring that back to Mr. Turner to say that, if there is a way to provide some more intermittent time. I guess if you could help me, Bobby, I'm sorry, if you could go through the calendar and tell me exactly what you would do. You would still start on the 12th as the opening day. Walk me through it from there so we have it.
If we start on the 12th, we would be opening on the 12th, PD on the 13th. We would have the 14th off. And then PD on the 17th, 18th, have the 19th off. PD on the 20, 21, I think that is, it's purple. I can't see the number. And then have the weekend. Or if somebody thinks that it needs to be divided up even more, you could go back to starting on the 11th and still have a longer weekend. I don't know where you would put the days that the classified people have to come in. I know there was a discussion about them coming in on the 17th when we weren't there.
Maybe you could just do something with Wednesday the 19th, and that might fit your schedule a little bit better.
So John, you're saying make that an X and move that PD day
to another place,
earlier.
To another place. And that's right. And that would give her the scatter that she's possibly looking for.
Okay.
No, it was the elementary principals that wanted it. I'm just saying that we, in my opinion, haven't done it with this calendar. We've added one extra day and we still have a big clump of PD in there.
I'll speak for the elementary principals. So looking at the other calendar we had 1, 2, 3, 4, we had opening day, then 4 days, then the weekend, then a PD day, and then kids. So it was everything all pushed in there together. So even though we still have 3 consistent days on the 18th, 19th, and 20th, because we've spread out the other PD days with some weekends in there, it seems more manageable and less overbearing to us. So I agree, Bobby, with what you're saying. There are still 3 PD days in there as opposed to 4 before, but because opening day now occurs the week before with the PD day, it's spread it out a little more.
Stephanie, what do you think from a middle school perspective, from a principal's middle school perspective?
The principals agree that the spreading out of the PD days is the best thing because it gives us and the teachers just a little bit of a break in between. I think we're on board with the elementary principals.
Okay, thanks. Mary, what do you think?
I'm okay with whatever at this point. I feel like we're making so many variables. It's hard to even keep up with where the calendar is at now. You know, a part of me is we've got 3 weeks and we don't even know if we're going to try and start the 12th. We don't even know what model we're going to. So I feel like this is all still very hypothetical at this point because we discussed earlier this morning, I feel this calendar could still work. Just like Mike Wilson was saying that we would just do an AA day that first week and then BB because we really don't need that C day in the middle. But I can go with whatever. I mean, just as long as I'm worried about the classified associate, I'm worried about what time they have because I know it's always an issue with them meeting their requirements for their year of retirement. I mean, that's a concern. Obviously, I'm concerned for our teachers too. I think our teachers know that they're going to have to come back and the work is going to be hard. I just know that everybody wants answers and we need to start making a decision as to what we're going to do rather soon because it's, you know, I know once they hear whatever, you know, is the proposal of whatever may happen, that's when the questions are going to start coming flooding in and it's going to make everybody's job that much harder because we need to have all the answers and we need to be able to explain why this calendar is the way that it is or why we're doing this the way that we're doing.
Right, it's an excellent point. Yeah, and as I said, and Mr. Turner said this too, there's a lot of give and take here. There's not going to be a perfect calendar just because of the nature of the crisis. So we want to get as close as we can, obviously, and there's some things that we don't want to disrupt. We've already addressed those, like salary and classified. So I think if it's okay with everybody, let me just give him tomorrow the honest conversation, give him the notes. I mean, I think, would you agree that if we had to prioritize the calendar we see in front of us, if we had to go with it, it does meet a lot of the objectives if we had to prioritize. I would also say that the calendar that the elementary principals are proposing, moving the day, that PD back to start on a Monday is also something that's an option. I would tell him then, if we can, there is some concern that maybe we haven't spread it out even farther. But would we all agree that we can make this calendar work if needed? Because in the end of the day, it does fall, because of the emergency, the way that this emergency works, it does fall in the hands of Mr. Turner and the board to make the decision. We just have to give them input as to what will work. Any objections to any of that? Dr. Brown, Mr. Fryman, I want to make sure I include you in this too. Do you have any comments that you want to make from the school board's perspective?
I would just say thanks to everybody who's been talking, and I think you're right on, Jim. I think nothing's going to be perfect, and we could make all these plans, and it could all change tomorrow. I mean, if you read any of the 500 articles that are published every day on COVID-19, which no one does, no one can possibly, it's not possible. I think you know, we can go forth. And I think I like what you said about just be honest with him about what we've discussed and what the caveats are and what the concerns are. And then, you know, he can make a recommendation to us. And I know we've heard from, you know, teachers, and we've heard from principals, and I think this option looks better than the last one. It looks like we're at least making an attempt to find some common ground in there, knowing that we're all zoomed out, we're all PD'd out, but we're going to go forward together, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have nothing to add based upon what Marie had just shared with you. And I do agree with what Mary had shared regarding that it's not going to be perfect, but we do have to have the solid plan in place because there are going to be a lot more questions flooding. And as perfect as we want this to be, a lot of things could potentially change depending upon what the state pushes down as well.
Good point. Thank you. All right. Mr. Ford, if I'm going to take you up on your offer, if you wouldn't mind preparing that other calendar or that shift, and then Bobby, I will make sure that Mr. Turner understands what your concern is, and if he feels like we need to spread it out more, we can certainly do that. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn this evening?
Just to make sure I'm clear, Dr. Detweiler, technically the shift is going to be to take that PD day on August the 24th, move it to the week of August 10th to the 14th. Students' first day then would move up to August the 24th. So we start on a Monday, clean week, Monday through Friday. And then just to readjust the numbers and the days where shift everything up a day where classified would come into work to fulfill their contract, and we would cover them as well as all staff, classified and certified. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. That's right.
You'll have it tonight.
Thank you. Good guy, man.
Yeah. As
Okay.
a parent, I just want to thank everybody for their hard work in this. This is a tremendous amount of work. You guys have your work cut out for you. And I know whatever plans are being put in place are done with so much thought and consideration for everybody. And that's what I would tell people if asked what it was like to serve on the committee, that everybody was thought about in this position. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Kim. And thank you to all of you. Really, this is very helpful to be able to have constituents, really have solid input. So thank you very much. I know Mr. Turner thanks you as well.
Mrs. Rubin, if you would please, while I've got you on here, when I make those adjustments and create that calendar, I will email it to both you and Dr. Detweiler so that you can provide copies in color. And I appreciate that very much. So please be watching your email. It'll be there sometime tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If there are no other comments, we will go ahead and adjourn at 7 p.m. on the dot. You all have a great evening. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you, Jim.
Take care. Bye-bye.